Oh, what I was gonna say is they maybe need to check who is in charge of the curriculum at the church event. Like, are they Christian? Uh, it sounds like in Charlotte the curriculum may have been outsourced or something by somebody that was a little bit more worldly than they would have liked to appreciate it, and then maybe they got it right the next time. Yeah, so I figured maybe people inside the church should write the curriculum, and that's just a teacher in me. It seems, because if I'm going into an AI instruction and then they're talking and they don't know what they're doing, I'm like, why are we struggling with the AI? Then obviously the wrong person is writing the curriculum for the event. That's all I'm saying, and it seems like that's what happened.
Should I have a question? Should single women or people be speaking at a single event, or should married women and men be speaking at a single event?
That was my first eyebrow raise. I'm like, why are there single people on the panel?
Yeah, is experienced single people telling other singles how to remain single, essentially.
Honestly, I think for a wholesome conversation, I do think both perspectives are needed. Like if I'm Christian and I'm single and I'm in the dating pool, so to speak, having someone who has been married, actually, we get this sometimes in these conversations. Um, Having someone like me, I've been married 21 years, and I would say things and give advice, and they're like, "Oh, you've been out of the dating market for 21 years. You can't really give me advice because you have no idea, what the dating market is like now at 21 years ago was totally different. So I do think having a perspective of being a single Christian woman and man as part of the panel, as well as those who are married, would open up great dialogue, because I think they can pose questions to the married couples, um, as a Christian being currently single in a dating market that they currently have.
I have a follow up question because I've never understood the logic behind just because you've been married for 20 years, you can't give me any advice on being single or finding a spouse, because the same way that they found that person is literally going to be the same way that any other person would find their person. Like
To a
the
degree, I would say yes and no, because my approach 21 years ago, I'm not competing with the same things that are available now. I'm not competing with social media. I'm not competing with cell phones. I'm not competing with the amount of access. I'm not competing with the fact that, the opportunity of going out. Like back in the day, we communicated, right? There was a lot more level of communication, between men and women. If they went to a party, they actually danced. They wasn't holding up the wall, just watching, seeing what everybody did. We interacted more. Now this is a different kind of generation. So the way my husband approach, or my approach that would have worked in the 90s, may not necessarily work with the generation, especially with the way that I see young girls moving, like in high school, or just out of high school, have just graduated. It's very different than the way we moved back in the 90s.
with
So
Wait a second.
those are going to look a little different. The tactics are going to look, is a how they said, what is the same game, different players. So even though the players are different, there's still a different process that you may go to get the same result.
Let's go to
what's
Shan, Luis, and then Viz. Go ahead, Shan.
I see what Biz is saying. I think that it's important to have a well-rounded panel. So you can have new love, people who found love in this generation, right? People who have been in love like you, mistaken, because you guys have something different to offer to the table. You understand what I'm saying? So I think it shouldn't be one or the other. Why not both? Or maybe somebody who's newly engaged as well. Like all those people on the panel, not just a bunch of single people. Because I agree, single people like, Negro, you single too. You look like you need to be out here taking some advice. Like, what the hell? I'd rather hear from people who have done it, even if it's been years ago, because maybe you can give us something totally different from what worked. Because I think that we always like to rewrite what works when we really just have to go back to the drawing board and just see, like, no, this work. You don't have to change what's already working. We try to change it, but we probably shouldn't. But again, you should definitely have people of different times. Nowadays, this work, I found my husband a year ago, 2 years ago. So they're well aware of the social media and all those things. I found my husband 20 years ago. I found my husband MySpace was going on. Whatever. A whole panel of people of different generations. Because you're right, it does change, but we still need to hear the message. And then the single people just need to be single in the audience, taking it in.
All right, we're gonna go to Luis. Let's make sure we try to keep it, like 1 minute 50 seconds, y'all, so we can kind of keep the conversation flowing. Go ahead, Luis.
Yeah, I really like what Miss Taken had shared. I thought that was really beautifully said. I also echo the sentiment that Shan Monet has shared as well. I think that the biggest problem, like everything aside, like let's just put everything aside. What it really comes down to nowadays is communication. There is no more effective communication. People do not communicate the way that we used to communicate before. Today's form of communication is lazy. And everything, there's too much room for interpretation, there's too much room for misunderstanding, there's not enough room for grace, there's not enough room for growth. There just isn't an organic process of communication. People have really gotten very comfortable with long distance, texting or online versus really in space within community of people. And sort of communication today is a lost art. Even what we're doing up here, sharing, giving each other, personal lived experiences, things of that sort, is a form of communication. And we're communicating to a broad audience who is currently listening or will listen at some point later on down the road. But I think it's very important that the emphasis, because you can like someone, but if you don't really communicate with them well and you misunderstand them and like everything about them, and you're not really paying attention to the cues, you're just gonna miss the mark. And there's just gonna be a bunch of frustration built up over time, and this misunderstanding of that person doesn't really care about you or they're not interested in you. And I really think that just starts at the home. These schools are not teaching these kids or preparing these kids, how to effectively communicate, not only with themselves, with other people, but even with adults who are out here, have been out here for a long time working and participating in life. So I just think that we got to get back to like brass roots, like really effective communication, that really starts at the home, because that's really where a lot of this stems to.